Yes, although not exclusively money. Source of, well, we've discovered, sociologists have discovered in general, for example, that source of income is more important than amount of income. So you can be really rich and have a big gob of money, but it's not nearly as important in determining real upper class status than if you just go out to the mailbox, send somebody out to the mailbox and get a check of inherited wealth. Inherited wealth is obviously the very highest status thing so far as income is concerned. So when we for our own sociolinguistic purposes, when we calculate social status, we look at source of income, we look at education, we look at occupation, we look at housing, and we look at reputation of housing area. This is the sort of classical big five in calculating social status. But modern sociologists will tell you that probably the best way to determine social status is to ask local people about the meanings of status. For example, the African American communities and white communities, if you use the same measures of social status, you'll be led far astray. Right? For example, just think of being a debutante. If you're a young white person and you are a debutante, the sign of upper middle class or even above upper middle classness is very strong. In the African American community, it goes all the way down into the upper working class. So you just can't use the same kinds of symbols and stuff as you cross from one culture to another. Yes, sir.
Earlier you were talking about how minority dialects, like we had more solidarity with feminists, and what you had, kind of the influence of what you had kids and gravity more to like your lives. Why isn't it the other way around? Why do we go after like be more white, have higher status? Why do we the higher status white
That's a very interesting question. Ellen Ryan asked that question years and years ago social psychology. She says, why in the hell would anybody not do what would be the best thing, to get done for yourself? Well, I think the pressure to be a member of your own community is much, much stronger than we assign value to. The other thing that's important to remember is that people have been told if they do this and that in minority circumstances that doors will open to them. And we know that we can't make that kind of promise. We know that, for example, in racism and other areas, that if you learn to talk better, that your skin not going to change color, when you learn to talk better. And so there's still going to be prejudice and so forth. So a lot of people just don't believe us when we tell them that if you get good grammar and buzz in the third person indicative singular, that you don't marry the spouse of your dreams and move out to the suburbs. But I think that's not the main thing. The main thing, of course, is that during these language formative years, your future employment and success is way in the back of your mind, right? So what sports are you going to play? Who are you going to hang around with? What kind of clothes are you going to put on that will indicate that you're a member of that community? So it's that time when that vernacular is formed, right? And that vernacularity among people who are prejudiced against has a great deal of symbolic value for them. If you're not prejudiced against, then you look for other things for symbolic value. You don't need language because you go off to school and your language doesn't get fixed. You take a grammar test, and, well, the grammar test is your grammar. You don't have to do anything, right? You just sit down and taking a grammar test is kind of silly. Why are they giving me this test, right? So I think the long explanation is one that we spend a lot of time on the pressure to be members of local communities during the period when your language is most solidly formed in its vernacular. And to acquire something later on is something that some people do and something that some other people find very, very hard to do. Yeah? Obviously, some people, either their college years or even post-college years have managed to turn in their vernacular. Other people have found it very, very difficult to do. But that community, the pressure to belong to a community is probably stronger among minorities than it is among majorities because of the symbolic value of membership in that community. Yes?
You mentioned the gender difference in language change, how women are the first to pick it up. Is that just for English, or is it all languages, or just patriarchal societies?
Every place matriarchal, patriarchal, non-riarchal, every society we've ever looked at, women are the leaders in linguistic change. And every time we think we find a contradiction, we find that we were not looking at the right stuff. We thought, for example, when we did this work in Egypt, we said, well, men speak more standard Arabic than women. But we were stupid. We were equating standard Arabic with Quranic Arabic. Well, of course, the men went to Islamic schools, and they spoke Quranic Arabic. They learned it in school. But the upper class, upper middle class Kyrie's Arabic, Arabic of Cairo or the street was something that women were leaders in. And so every time we think we have a contradiction, it gets turned around. We thought we had contradiction in Brazil. Well, that turned out to be a result of some very quick immigration to Brasilia. We thought we had some contradictions in Northern Ireland. That turned out to be a very short pattern of employment because women in the working class Catholic neighborhoods left the neighborhoods and learned a little more standard English. But then when we looked at the larger long-term patterns, doesn't look like it's an English thing at all. Looks like it's a real sex and gender thing. Now, of course, the trick is to explain it. Why do women talk better than men? Well, there are a bunch of neurologists telling us things about men and women's brains, but I think this is going too far. I think there are several reasons, and we probably just could talk about three of them very, very quickly. First of all, regardless of advances in equality between men and women, women are still the nurturers of the next generation. For this anthropological, cultural reason, women are on the outlook for good stuff to pass it on to their offspring. So they're going to speak more standardly so they can speak that way to their kids. Secondly, plain old sexism reason, almost Marxist, right? What stuff do you get to own in a society? Well, men get to own positions, they get to own money. Remember, it was not that long ago, y'all women should know this, right? It wasn't very long ago that you could not own property. Your husband owned the property. You didn't share in the ownership of that property. So, in fact, men then get to extend their control over some things, and women get to extend their control over stuff that men don't want. So they get linguistic capital. Okay, go back to the 19th century and look at the stuff that women had control over. Literary societies, arts societies, music societies, language. A lot of stuff that men didn't give a whack about, right? Or if they did, just a few men, dropping some dollars here and there to get a tax break, right? So women got linguistic capital like they got other kinds of capital. And the other thing, of course, is the kind of, and this is more related to sex roles, and that is just the general social pressure, differential pressure between men and women. Now, I don't want to be nasty, but I want you to name all the dirty words you can think of which describe young men who go out and have numerous sexual partners before marriage. How many nasty kind of labels do you have for young men who do that? They're studs, they're make-out artists, they're players, and these all don't sound like too many nasty, insulting words. Now give me all the words you can think of, I won't permit you to say any, for young women who promiscuously have large numbers of sexual partners before marriage. So the pressure on women to behave in a more standard way is something that we find in avenues other than language. So there's three good reasons, and we could probably think of some more.